Hello and welcome to the Mad Knitting YouTube channel. This is episode 14. It is March 17th, 2022, St. Patrick's Day. So happy St. Patrick's Day if that means something to you. My name is Susan. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am coming to you from Madison, Wisconsin, which is where I live and work and bike around the city, which I will be talking about for just a little bit today. You can find me on Instagram as MADTOWN_MAMA or Ravelry if that is a site that you can use, as MADTOWNMAMA without the underscore. This is my corner of the internet where I talk about my crafting life. Mostly that is knitting, but occasionally I foray into other things. So I'll be chatting about a couple of different things today, but mostly knitting. So I actually wanted to start out a little bit with some non-knitting stuff. I thought I would mention what I'm wearing because, I don't know, it just factored into my day in ways that I thought was worth sharing. So this may seem like a very uninteresting thing to talk about. It's just a plain black t-shirt, but I made it. I sewed it for myself. I actually made it maybe 3 years ago. I've had it for a little while, but I really like it. It's a very basic t-shirt, which is something that I like to wear. I wear a lot of pretty basic, boring clothes. And by the way, it is the Jade Tee by Ray Hoekstra, made by Ray. I've mentioned her before. And I've made several of these. But one of the reasons I'm wearing it is because today something came up for work, or I had an opportunity to go to this lunch thing downtown. It was a political thing, and I was just there to have lunch and kind of observe and listen to what was being talked about. It actually was not very interesting, but it was one of those things where I wasn't really sure if I was going to know anybody there. And I am very introverted. I am also sometimes very shy. I was terribly shy as a child. I've managed to work through most of that now as an adult, but I still have these moments where, especially if I am going into a situation where there are going to be people around and I'm not going to know them, and I have to like chit chat, make small talk, network, whatever, that just kind of fills me with dread and anxiety. And I was afraid that's how it was going to be today. Turned out it wasn't so bad. One of my coworkers decided last minute to come, and we really didn't have to talk much. We just kind of listened to the discussion. But as I was getting ready to go, I thought that I would wear something that I made, because that actually gives me a little confidence boost. Even if nobody else there has any idea that I made something that I'm wearing, if I'm feeling kind of anxious or insecure, I can think to myself, you know what? But I made something that I'm wearing, and I bet nobody else, or maybe not many other people in this room, even know how to do that. So, yeah. That is one reason that I chose this to wear. It's also like nice and basic, so it blended well. But the other thing I wore, which I'm not wearing anymore, because you'll see why in a second, was a skirt that I made. This was like a years-long project. So I'll show you the skirt. Like more than 10 years ago, I decided to make myself a skirt, and it was a pretty basic, like, what is it called? Gourd maybe, where you have several panels, vertical panels that you sew together to go around, and they get wider as you go down. So you kind of end up with this, a little bit of a flare. The pattern actually had 2 layers. So you would have like an underlayer that was a little longer, and then an overlayer that was a little shorter. So if you use really sheer fabric, then you get this really nice effect. Well, I started off intending to make it that way, got about halfway through making it. I forget what went wrong, but I ended up scrapping the whole idea of the top layer but I still had the bottom pieces, like the under pieces cut out, that was just this plain black linen, which is a very nice basic wardrobe piece. So I finished sewing it up like a few years after I'd started. And then a couple years after that, when I had hardly ever worn it, I thought it would be fun to do some freehand embroidery on it. So that's what I did, and that took a few more months. And that's what you can see here at the bottom. This was maybe 5-6 years ago that I was doing this embroidery. I forget what was happening like on the, you know, in the sort of handcrafting internet at that time, but I think there must have been a lot of hand stitching and embroidery that was popular because I was inspired. So I got all this, looks like it was pearl cotton, and I just did some freehand stitching. Clearly I had like a botanical theme on the brain and sort of some abstract geometric, a little bit of, I'm not going to call this sashiko because I know it's not, but I think I was kind of inspired by that style of stitching. Anyway, yeah, so I don't wear this skirt terribly often because I don't wear skirts very often, but I really like it. It's unique. It's definitely one of a kind. It is also right now quite filthy. Look. Big old splotch of mud and sand on the back. And the reason is that I decided to bike to this function downtown. Now, if any of you are familiar with my city, which is Madison, Wisconsin, you will know probably that we are a very bike-friendly city. We actually, I think, have a platinum rating from the, what is it? The American Bike League, the League of American Bicyclists, whatever the national association is that does these designations for communities and how, like, ratings for how bike friendly they are. Madison is extremely bike friendly. We've got a lot of bike routes. We have a lot of rail trail paths that go through the city. It really is pretty accessible if you can deal with the weather, because we have a lot of months where it's cold, and if you can put up with biking through some slop, which I did today. It's about a 5-mile ride from where I live to where I was going. Great trails, like a great route, but it's mid-March. We have a lot of snow melting, and it was actually raining when I was leaving and coming home. So between the puddles and the snow melt and the fact that the streets are absolutely covered in all that extra leftover like salt and sand from the snow treatment, like treating the snowy streets in the winter, I got a lot of crap on the back of this skirt. So now I have to wash it, but I still really wanted to show it to you because it really did give me a confidence boost when I went to this thing, to be wearing a skirt that I made and a shirt that I made, and nobody noticed it or said anything, and that didn't matter. I just felt a little more comfortable in my own skin knowing that I had made the clothes, some of the clothes that I was wearing. So that is my story of what I'm wearing today. So coming back to knitting, which is most of what I talk about on this channel, I have 2 finished projects to show you. The first one, you haven't seen it all yet because I started it and finished it in the time between the last video I did and now, but I've talked about it. This is a present for my niece who turned 6 on Sunday, so she's not gonna get it quite by her birthday because I have to mail it. But it is the Sunspot sweater. It is a cardigan, as you can see. It's a design by Elena Nodal, who sadly passed away a few years ago. I believe she had cancer that was pretty aggressive, and it was really sad. I remember that that a bunch of people were buying her patterns to try and help raise money to cover some expenses for her family, and it was just really, really sad. This pattern, there is an adult version as well. it was really, really fun. It's pretty ingenious. So the construction of it, I'm gonna try to explain this in a way that makes sense and doesn't take too long. But you do a provisional cast on along the top. And then you do raglan increases. I mean, here it's pretty standard raglan increases, but along the front, you can see that it doesn't entirely come together in the front. So it's very narrow fronts. And at the same time you've got those increases, you also have this cable that's going along that raglan seam. But then when you're done with that top part, you break the yarn and you pick up the provisional cast on stitches, and then you pick up stitches all the way around and do some ribbing. So you can see how that makes this nice little ribbing band that goes sort of down across the fronts and then across the back. And then there's this lace pattern that you do down to the bottom, and there's a ribbing detail here along you call it a button band, but there's no buttons on it. So it's very girly. It's open front, and I think it's going to go beautifully over this dress that I made her that I showed you already, but I'm going to put it all together in a hanger so you can see them together. Very springy. Very nice springy little outfit for a 6-year-old girl. The lace, man, y'all, I'm not like that much of a lace knitter. I messed it up a little bit, had to take some of it out. It was slow going for the first couple of repeats, but I got the hang of it. And I think it looks really nice. It took a lot of concentration to follow the chart, partly because I don't do a lot of lace, but also partly because the pattern includes a lot of double decreases. I don't know if you can tell in these kind of medallion patterns, but there were a lot of double decreases, and she had about 4 different kinds. So you're either knitting 3 together, purling 3 together, slipping 2, knit 1, pass those 2 over, or slip 1, knit 2 together, pass that over. It was a lot, and I really kind of had to be paying attention as I went along, but it was worth it because it is so cute. The yarn, I almost forgot to tell you about the yarn, is Mrs. Crosby Hatbox. I don't think I have the label, but it is no longer available, unfortunately. It is listed as DK weight, but it is definitely lighter than that. I would call it maybe a light sport weight, but it's mostly merino yarn with a little bit of cashmere and silk. So it feels really, really nice. It got really nice and drapey after I blocked it. In fact, the sweater grows in length considerably after blocking because of that lace and also the fiber content of the yarn I used. So I'll throw in a couple pictures that I took before blocking so you can kind of see the difference in how long it was. But since it's like an open flowy sweater, I think that's to be expected. That's a welcome feature. So that's the first thing I finished, and I have to package that all up tonight and send it for her birthday present. Second finished object. This one I have showed before. My Arboreal sweater. I thought about wearing it today. It looks wrinkly just because of how I had it drying, draped on a drying rack to dry after blocking. I have actually worn this already. I finished it last Friday night, and it was we had a cold snap. We actually had snow, quite a lot of snow on the ground a week ago, and it was cold, and the high on Saturday was only 25 Fahrenheit, which I actually looked it up. I think that's about -4 Celsius. So it was pretty cold, and I did not want to take the time to block this because when I block, I get it all the way wet and then have to let it dry. So I just finished it, wove in the ends, and wore it all day Saturday. So I'll throw in some pictures of that because I had my daughter take a few pictures of me just standing in the backyard. But since then I have blocked it, so the stitches should be all smoother, but of course it's kind of wrinkly from having been on the drying rack. But I love this sweater. It fits so well now. I had redone the body entirely. I think I shared about this a couple episodes ago, but the yoke fit really well. And then after I divided for the sleeves and got pretty far down on the body, I tried it on again, and it was a little too snug in the body, and then it was making the yoke bunch up. And so I debated about what to do, but I ended up just ripping it all the way back to the sleeve divides and just casting on a few more stitches under the arms, because I didn't need a lot more room. I just needed enough that it wouldn't be tight. And it worked out really, really well. I did not make any modifications to the pattern, except that I don't think she calls for a split hem at the bottom, but I just like the look of that with garter stitch, so I did that. I have ribbing on the end of the sleeves, which I think is what the pattern calls for. I don't remember. Anyway, I really, really like this sweater, and it's mid-March, so I'll probably have opportunity to wear it yet this season. The yarn I used is, the main color is Barrett Wool Co. It's a DK weight that was only available in a special run of kits a few years ago. I wasn't interested in the pattern that came with the kits, but I really wanted the yarn, so I ordered actually a couple of kits so I could have a few different options with it. And then the contrast color is Utopia Helix. This is one that they spin themselves. So it's like dyed in the wool, and then it's a bunch of different colors that gets mixed up, and then I think there's sort of a barber pole twist thing, so you get this cool gradient effect, which is not super dramatic in this sweater, though you can see a difference. You can see that it is a little sort of darker here and gets brighter as you go down the yoke. But some of their colorways are really quite dramatic. It's similar to Spin Cycle, which is, I think, pretty well known for that kind of thing. But I'm really, really happy with this sweater. I know I've talked about it before, but just for posterity's sake, the pattern again is called Arboreal, and the designer is Jennifer Steingass, who is also known as Knit Love Wool on Instagram and Ravelry. So those are the two things I finished. It's only two things, but it is not too shabby if you ask me. When it comes to works in progress, I have a couple small projects and one ongoing larger one to show you. The socks that I showed before, I have not picked up or touched at all, because I don't know, I'm getting close to the toe, and they're like my on-the-go project, but if I'm sitting in a concert or something like that, I don't want to be taking off my shoes and trying on a sock. So that's just been sitting and waiting. So last night I started another sock. My husband and I, we had not like been out, just the two of us, in so long. It's been months. That's just life as introverts with two kids and an ongoing pandemic. We just hadn't been out. But he scored tickets to see Tig Notaro. She's a comedian that I adore. I think she is so funny. I listen to her podcast, Don't Ask Tig. It's really hilarious. Anyway, so we got tickets to see Tig Notaro, and of course we got there way early because it was downtown, and we got there way early so that we could get a parking spot and get through security. They had pretty tight security. And then of course it didn't start till 20 minutes after it was supposed to. So long story short, I brought a sock to knit, and this is as much as I got done before the show started, and then it was too dark to see anything. So this yarn may surprise you. It doesn't want to focus. This yarn may surprise you because it kind of looks like Barbie's convertible exploded. Like, it's like a whole bunch of different pinks splattered splatter pinks. But sometimes that's just how I roll. I'm not like a pink person, but I really like socks that are bright and colorful and maybe a little unexpected. And this is something I bought. I don't have the label. I never have the labels for sock yarn, I'm sorry. I think this might be Plymouth Happy Feet Splash. I think. I'm not sure. But I got this like at, might have been the Wisconsin Craft Market, which is no longer around, but I just kind of saved it. There's so much going on in the yarn that I don't need to do anything in the pattern. Like I can do just a plain sock, plain ribbing, or plain stockinette, and the variegation and the speckles and everything in the color will make it interesting on its own. So who knows when I will actually finish this. I don't like to have too many socks on the go, but it makes me smile because it's so bright and because we were waiting for Tig Notaro to do her show, which was hilarious and totally worth it. So that's one thing I have on the go, or in progress. Another work in progress is my paper doll sweater, which I had really kind of been hoping to be finished with by now, but it's not. It's getting there. And I have a few things to say about this. So this has shown up on the podcast, at least podcast. It's a video journal. I've showed it once or twice here before already, maybe 3 times. But it is a design by Kate Davies, Scottish designer. As you can see, it's a colorwork yoke, and it's got this really fun, this is one that came out years ago, and I've been wanting to make it for a really long time because I just really love that motif across the yoke of the folded paper dolls. And construction-wise, it is written to be bottom up. So you start at the bottom, at the body. The original design has just very short capped sleeves, so you do like this little bit of ribbing for both the sleeves and then join it and go up the yoke. Well, I didn't want to do that for a few reasons. One, I just really hate the awkwardness of joining everything up at the yoke. I do not enjoy it. Two, I thought I might want longer sleeves. I still haven't decided, but obviously once you've knit the sleeves, it's a lot harder to change your mind than if you're going top down and can decide as you go, or if there's a yarn issue, you know, like if you think you might run out of yarn, you can change your mind then. So those were the 2 main reasons. So what I did was do a provisional cast on that took ages because there were a bazillion stitches. This is fingering weight yarn. For the yoke, I knit up the yoke, yada yada, and then picked up those provisional cast on stitches to go down the body. As you can see, I haven't done the sleeves yet, but and I'm almost done with the body. I was doing some professional development stuff this morning and got most of the ribbing done. It's actually corrugated ribbing at the bottom. I don't know how well you can see, but so for that, with this main teal color, I was doing all the knit stitches, and with the gold color, I was doing the purl stitches. And the contrast isn't great. It's very subtle, but that's okay. And then for the bottom, there's like 2 plain rows with this gold color and then an I-cord bind off. So that'll take a while. But once that's done, I think I might wear it for a day or for a couple of hours and just see how it feels and decide how much of a sleeve I want. It's very lightweight yarn. This is, I'll show you the yarn. Hey, I do have a label. For this. This is Sun Valley Fibers Fingering Tweed. I bought it at the Wisconsin Sheep and Wool Festival last September. So I don't know how well you can see, but that's what I'm using. And it's very lightweight. It's super wash with just a little bit of tweed. I think it's 15% nylon or whatever the tweed is made out of. So if I left it short sleeved, I think it would actually be a really nice spring sweater. But I might want more sleeve, and I have plenty of yarn to do that. So I'm just not sure yet. I haven't really decided. Another thing I wanted to say about this, because this is the second sweater and not the last that I will be using this method of like doing the top part after provisional cast on just for the yoke and then picking up the stitches to go down. There is a child sweater that I want to make that I'll talk about when I'm actually ready to do it, but it's a tin can knits pattern and it's really adorable, but it's a bottom up design, and now that I know how to do this construction method, I don't ever want to go back to doing the whole body and sleeves thing before joining for the yoke if I don't absolutely have to. Anyway, the reason that works for this sweater and the sweater that I made for my daughter in December is that, okay, let me back up a little bit. So the thing with provisional cast on, if you cast on provisionally and you knit in one direction and then you put those live stitches on a needle and knit in another direction, you're not going to have the same number of stitches because they make, you know, on the knit side, they make a V, which is this way, you know, imagine a bunch of them in a row. And then if you turn them upside down, which is how they look when you're going the other way, you're off by like a half of a stitch, because what is a V this way is going to be offset when you turn it the other way. I don't know if that entirely makes sense. But when everything is knit in the same color, such as for this yoke, at least from the point of the cast on, you're not going to see that difference. Here you can see a little bit of a line, but that's because I blocked the yoke before I picked up the stitches to go down. So once the whole thing is blocked, you won't be able to see that. But if this was an all over colorwork sweater, for example, or if there was any kind of a texture pattern, like say a ribbed pattern, or if there was a cable pattern that went all the way up, you would be able to see it. It would be offset just a little bit. So this won't work for everything. It will only work when you have one color of plain stockinette that goes across that that part of the sweater where the, you know, where those two lines would come together. So I hope that makes sense. But for those things where it works, that is how I plan to do it. Okay. So that is Paper Dolls by Kate Davies. The third thing that I have going that I'm going to show you is another new cast on. So I talk about my on-the-go projects. I guess I've had a lot of places where I've been able to knit on the go lately because I started a hat. When was it? About a week and a half ago. A friend of mine asked if I was interested in seeing Sweeney Todd. The opera department was doing a production of it at the university, and I was totally into that. So I said, sure. And before we left, I decided I needed something really, really plain to work on, like during the show. So I decided to cast on the Polka Polka hat. I'll show you the pattern picture first. So first of all, this is from the book Moon and Turtle, published by Pom Pom Press. The designers are Sachiko and Kiyomi Bergen. They are twins based in Toronto, Canada. And this is just, it's full of really neat designs, including this hat. So this should give you an idea, and this doesn't have the pattern in it. So there's one version. There's another version. You can play with the length a little bit, but basically it's a very lightweight plain hat with lining. And what you do is you cast on provisionally, basically for the middle of the hat. I'm all about the provisional cast on lately. I don't know if you've noticed that. And then knit up for a while, do the decreases for the crown, and then you pick up those stitches with a different yarn and knit the other way, decrease for the crown, and then you can shove one end into the other. You can do it whichever way you want, and then fold it up for the brim. So the pattern calls for, I mean, they have a bunch of different yarn choices that they list, but basically you use fingering weight for one half of it and a mohair silk blend for the other half. So you end up with a very lightweight, but I expect very warm hat. So for the, do I have the label? I do have the label. For the one I'm doing, I'm using, this label is going to be really hard to see. This is West Yorkshire Spinners Exquisite 4-ply. I guess that's pretty easy to see, she says as it goes out of focus. Good grief. Anyway, Exquisite is right, man. It is 80% Falkland wool, 20% silk. I bought this to make a hat for my husband for Christmas. If you watched that episode, I talked about how I thought I might do a Musselburgh hat, and then I decided not to for a couple different reasons. One of them being that the designer is problematic. So if you want to know more about that, you can watch that episode. It feels really nice to knit with. So this is going to be the, one layer of the hat. And the other layer, I mean, this is pretty plain. This is like gray. This is like a steel gray. It is as plain and simple as it gets. But I've decided that for the other layer, don't know if it'll be inside or outside, I am going to use the rest of this Knit Picks Aloft. It's the colorway Koi. It's showing up a little dark here because it's a dark rainy day today. That's a little better. But this is Koi is a great name for this colorway because it really is a bright goldfish orange. And I think that it's going to go really well with this gray yarn. Now, this isn't going to be a hat for my husband because I don't like fuzzy. He's not like a wearing fuzz kind of guy. That's okay. He's got other hats. I can always make him other hats. So I might keep this one for myself or put it in my giveaway pile. But I'm pretty excited about how this is going to go together. And I'm really excited about using up leftover yarn. So if you watched my last episode, you'll see that this is left over from the antler mittens that I made for myself a couple of weeks ago. And it really didn't take much at all. I mean, there's like 250 yards in one of these little skeins, and it didn't take much at all to make those mittens. So I am glad to have found a use for this already. So that brings me to my last topic of today, which I'll try to keep brief because I've kind of been yammering on for a little while already. And that is just the whole conundrum of what you do with leftover yarn. I have a lot of leftover yarn. I have a lot of yarn, but one of the reasons it keeps piling up is because I've been knitting forever, and I keep what I have left from projects. And sometimes that's a substantial amount. Like this, I haven't weighed but I think I probably have more than half the ball left. Hopefully I'll use the rest of it or most of the rest of it for that hat. But, that's a lot. I'm definitely not going to use the whole skein of, that's 100-gram skein of the yarn for this part of it. So I'm definitely going to have some of that left. I always have a lot of sock yarn left. Like I need far less than one whole skein to make a pair of socks. And, you know, I'm just not exactly sure what to do with it. I don't like the uncertainty of thinking that I might run out. So if anything, I will have an extra skein or more, and I'm fine with that. I would rather have some left over than run out, especially if I'm making something for somebody else. Like, that's just like for security's sake. But I just thought I'd show you some of the yarn I have left over from previous projects. And I don't even know what I'm going to do with it exactly, but just by way of example. So for example, remember the sweater that I made for my brother, the Unbearable Hoodie by another designer we shall not name? I thought for sure I was going to run out of yarn for that one because, why? Because he's so tall, and because the rate I was using it up as I was going, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm definitely going to run out. So I ordered more because, you know, I didn't want him to end up with like a cropped sweater or sleeves too short or something silly. Fortunately, I didn't run out, but now I have this extra yarn. Like I think I have 2 balls of this charcoal that I didn't even need. And I know I have an orange ball too, because I thought I was going to run out of orange and I didn't. So yeah, these are sitting in that bin. The sweater that I just finished for my son, I think when I checked the pattern yardage, I thought I'm going to need 8 skeins. So I bought 8 skeins and I used exactly 7. I mean, there's just this tiny little bit left of the 7th skein. So I could have gotten away with 7. And here's the 8th skein. I mean, it's nice. It's a nice 100-gram ball of navy blue yarn. It's Barocco Lannis. I don't mind having it. Like I said, it'll be great for something. Throw color work in another project or make a hat or a pair of mittens or something. But here I have this yarn taking up space in my stash, and I'm not going to try to return it to the yarn store. I don't need to do that. I'd rather use it. The sweater I made for my daughter. Oh my gosh, y'all. I have so much of that left. I have this much of it left. So the sweater I made for her is Wintersole. This is also Barocco Lannis yarn. Also bought from the South Ear, wonderful local yarn shop. I am pretty sure that I didn't even need one whole, and I was going by the yardage that the pattern called for. So there was obviously some padding in the pattern, and I would really rather that than run out, like I said. But I have this plus a little more of the light color that I used. You know, I'd have to weigh these. I think maybe I don't think these are both full skeins. I think maybe this is a full skein and this I had to use just a little bit of because there's color work in the yoke, obviously. Or no, wait, this was the main color. Anyway, I think I bought 5 skeins and only got into the 4th one a little bit. I ended up fixing the neckline. It was a little too wide, so I had to add a little bit so that I could decrease further and that it wouldn't be so wide on her. So I ended up using a little bit of this green skein, but I had like almost a full skein of this green left. So yeah, I've got a whole bunch of this same kind of yarn. This is just from recent projects to use, and I'm not sure how to use that all up. Not ready to give it away, so don't ask for it. I'm just saying. Just saying. And then, oh, let me show you the Arboreal sweater that I just finished for myself. I have this much left of that Barrett wool coat. So this is DK weight yarn. I think it must be woolen spun or combination woolen spun. Anyway, there's 300 yards. It was listed as 300 yards per skein. And I had 4 skeins, which comes to 1,200 yards. And I figured that would be about what I needed. Well, I have this whole one left, plus however much this is. So unless there was extra yardage on the skein not accounted for, I didn't even need 900 yards for the sweater that I made. And I made it, I mean, I mentioned that I have long arms. I made it plenty long. It really comes down over my hips. So yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit of this left. And I think I've got about a half a skein of this helix from the color work. So, I mean, I could probably get a hat and mittens out of what's left if I really wanted to. I don't know if I really want to, but there's quite a lot, like I said. So, I don't know. There are lots of different ways to use leftover yarn. I'm not a big blanket knitter. I'd almost rather do lots of hats and things like for charity, for example. If I have enough collected, I could maybe do a scrappy sweater, but you know, there's just a lot. So I don't know, what do you do with leftover yarn? Or do you figure out what to do with it? I don't know. I save it. Sometimes it really comes in handy for stuff, but it is kind of piling up. So, well, that is all I have for today. Thank you for joining me as I ramble on about the things that I make. I hope you all have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.